All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Marriage Matters with Ken and Shar. Excited to be with you. Glad that you're in with us for this episode. How you doing, babe?
I'm doing great.
Good?
We're up in beautiful Tehachapi.
We are up in a mountain community here.
Yes, it's wonderful and loving the weather. And we're with our two really great friends
Yeah.
that I know you want to introduce. And we're going to be doing a little interview today, which we're really excited about.
Everybody's got a story. The reason we have this set of friends is because we see so much in their marriage that's worthy of praise and an obvious work of God over many years in their life. So we're really grateful to welcome in Jay and Erica. So how you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Doing good?
Yeah, it's a beautiful day, 70 degrees outside.
It
And
is.
sunny.
We just enjoyed lunch out on your guys' back patio up here, and it was wonderful,
It's
wasn't it?
beautiful.
Yeah, good.
Mhm.
All right. So the reason we do interviews, again, it's just a little bit off the beaten track of what we do, but I know that people love it when we do because they have so much in common. We all have all things in common when you get right down to it. So I know that these kind of stories are fantastic. So let's start with this. Tell us a little bit about yourself, just kind of your ages, what you do, your kids, and all that stuff. Just give us a few minutes of generally who you are.
Oh, well, we are both nearing the wonderful speed limit of 50. That's always how I remember
Oh,
birthdays.
you're just babies.
When you hit a speed limit sign, you've hit an important one.
That's right.
We're getting there. Married, going on, this will be 25 years. Will be this coming year
Awesome.
for us, and we've got two kids, 17 and 19. We're kind of going through that stage of sort of just approaching empty nest.
Mhm.
Finishing up the teenage years and
Right on.
all that is fun in that time. 25 years.
One away at college on the other side of the country. Erica, how's that for you? I know that's a big deal.
Oh, it's challenging at times because you want to be able to help him and you can't always because you're so far away.
Sure.
But it's also exciting to see him experience new things and things that aren't here and see his successes. So that's a good thing.
I know when he was home recently, we got a chance to be with him a little bit. He looks great and he sounded great, and you got to be proud of him.
Very proud and of the young man or the man that he's
Yeah.
becoming, actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
And your youngest is a senior, so you are sneaking up on the old empty nest.
Yeah.
Can we tell you something? It's awesome. It's awesome. It is so awesome.
Just tell Erica, because I've been ready for a couple of years now. Because I've got two boys, and I think all the men who have sons would agree. There's
Yes.
there's only one lion in this pride,
Yeah.
and and it's about time for them to go find
And
their
it's
own.
not you. So
And it's like not you. But Mama's having a hard time
Sure.
with those changes. We are both very proud
Yeah.
of the young men they're becoming and the future they have set before them. But yeah, I'm ready.
And you guys have known the Lord a long time. So you guys were, when you got married, you were both believers walking with Jesus, right?
Yeah, we
Yes.
teenagers both. I know as a teenager, were you preteen?
I was preteen.
Yeah, when you for the record, Kenny baptized me, but I'm not sure he remembers. That was a long time
It
ago.
was. Where was that out at Casteras?
It was some pool, public pool.
Oh,
I can't even remember
Oh,
where it is
over on Airport
I was a
Drive, I think,
knucklehead
probably.
16-year-old,
Yeah,
and I was
yeah.
like, there were 200 people, and I'm in a public pool with a guy that actually, because I was connected with the youth pastor at
Yeah.
the time, not with Kenny, and so
right.
Oh,
who's this guy? And
That's
well,
right.
all right, he
Here
seems
I
nice
am.
enough.
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, that's,
you can't get rid of us.
yeah.
So you guys are second gen believers, both of you, second generation Christians, right? Grew up in a home with the knowledge of Christ.
Third generation for me. My paternal grandmother was a believer, and
Awesome.
so through my parents, and then and then yours are it was your parents, right?
Yeah.
Yes, my parents. And I think I was in around kindergarten when my parents came to know the Lord. So not from
Awesome.
the time I was a baby, but for most of my life.
Yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. So did you guys grow up? Just I thought, I know I didn't prep you for this question, but I grew up with a very low view of marriage from my childhood on. My family blasted apart when I was 6 years old or so. So I was raised by a wonderful single mom. But my point being, I had zero model of marriage at all, right? You guys had good models, right? Relatively speaking. Yeah.
Oh, very good.
Good, yeah.
For me, I mean, they didn't. Yeah, my folks were like a normal couple, right? They had
Yeah.
issues and, but there was a real dedication. And particularly, we spent a lot of time with my mom's side of the family, and she's one of 5. And the other 4 had all experienced divorce. So for
Okay.
me, there was this very unique and visible difference.
Yes.
Wow.
Because my parents were the only ones that had kind of gone the distance, whereas all the other aunts and uncles had gone through a divorce, and
Right on.
they're all doing well now. But
Yeah.
it's but you could.
So that felt special to you. That
It was
unique.
clear that
Yeah.
there was something different.
Awesome.
So
And Erica, you had a strong a household where the love was there and
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yep.
commitment.
Yep.
Yeah.
My mom and dad, we celebrated their 50th anniversary, their wedding anniversary last year.
Great.
So, yep, grew
Great.
up in,
So give us your proposal. We always love asking this question. Proposal stories. How'd it go, man?
do you want to take that one? Or
I will take that
Yeah.
one. So I think it was right before our last year of college, and we went down to Disneyland, and we were riding different rides that day. And I remember thinking, gosh, Jay, he keeps having to go to the bathroom. Like he'd go, oh, I'm going to go to the bathroom. So he'd go off and go to the bathroom. And I kept thinking that's odd because I don't remember him always having to do that because
Yeah.
we're at Disneyland, right? Spending time together. And then we were looking for, I remember asking, I wanted a churro. And the only churro was kind of by that we saw. I know.
It's been a constant in my life, the need to find a churro.
That's right.
Never
I
possible.
need a churro.
I need a churro.
I have to say, I do love a good churro.
I know. Anyway, so we were in front of the castle, and Jay said, hey, what does this say on the ground down here? And there's a big compass on the ground in front of the castle, and it says, when you wish upon a star, your dreams will come true. And I had to
Oh.
turn to see it. And when I turned around, Jay was down on his knee in front of everyone,
Oh, wow.
and he proposed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So the reason
Did they
I was-
stop and watch? I mean, did
They
you
took
end up with
photos.
an audience?
You know how they have the roving photographers?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So they caught the moment.
Oh, my.
And of course, I had to buy that massively
Yeah,
overpriced
for $49.99.
because that was.
Of course.
But the reason I kept going to the bathroom is I'm carrying around the most expensive thing I've ever bought. In
Making
my
sure it's
pocket
still there?
the whole time. And I was worried we're on these roller coasters, and I'm like, I had this vision all day of me dropping it in the
Yeah.
middle of like
So
Space Mountain. And you're like, what are you
Erica's-
gonna do?
that was
You're
so funny.
ruined.
Erica's thinking either this man has a really tiny bladder or he's got a ring in his pocket. One of the two.
No, I had no idea. It was a complete
Wow.
So
surprise
you did
that
not
day.
know.
I didn't know it was going to happen that day.
Not
Complete
that day.
surprise.
We knew that we had been talking
Mhm.
seriously about
Right on.
getting married, and I had led her to believe that we were going out to go backpacking, something I love to do,
hiking.
hiking.
Yeah.
and
Okay.
that I think she kind of as a red herring, as a hey, that's when we'll do this, so that anyway.
Yeah. It was
So that's why
fun.
I think
was
she
fun.
thought it was coming a different day.
Awesome. Did
But it
your,
was
did your
sweet.
family, Jay, know that you
My
were?
folks were with us.
Oh,
As it turns out,
They
went-
weren't.
not in that moment, but we were all in the park together that day.
Oh, did they know it was coming then, though?
I think
or-
they did. I'm trying to remember. if
Okay.
I mean, shoot, this is 25 years ago now.
And assuming she
They're
said yes,
teenagers.
then, right?
Yeah.
I
mean,
did. And we
okay,
have, it's
good.
pretty fun. So they came over, and I mean, Jay hadn't talked to a photographer, but they saw it. And then they said, hey, do you want to have your picture taken with Mickey and Minnie? And they went over and put us in the front of the line. I remember thinking, oh, these poor people that
I've
have
been
all waited
waiting.
with their kids.
Oh,
And then there was us, but we have a great picture
Oh,
from
that
that
is
day. It's fun.
sweet.
And it was so long ago that we didn't really have cell phones. We had to
Sure.
find a payphone to call my parents to tell them.
Oh,
wow.
So, anyways,
It's a little blast from the
yeah,
past.
blast from the
How
past.
great.
That's sweet.
Anyways, that was fun.
All right. So this is another question we start out most of our interviews with. How about this? Marriage, harder or easier than you originally thought?
We could say this in unison: harder.
Harder.
So, my opinion on the issue is it's harder because especially if you get married young, which frankly, I encourage getting married whenever you're ready. Like,
Right.
everybody's
That's
got a
true.
recipe, right? And
Mhm.
and we knew a lot of people. We were going to college together, and that's how we met. And everybody thought we were getting married too young. And I'd say 25 years is pretty good proof that I made the right
Mhm.
choice.
Yeah,
or we
right.
made the
Right.
But you don't really know what's in front of you in
Mm-mm.
life, especially if you grow up in a healthy set of households and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
and things come together at the right time in the right way and that kind of. So if you live that kind of youth, marriage is exciting and new, but you just have no idea the
Yeah.
challenges that lay before you. So I
Right.
think that's really been,
Yeah,
for me, that's been why I would say it's harder.
sure. You said harder too, Erica,
I
right?
did. I think that you are more naive when you're younger. You don't realize the kinds of things that can come into your life because you don't Well, maybe you live in a house and your parents, I mean, they're not going to share all the struggles that they have, right?
Right.
Because
Sure.
you don't as parents.
Right.
And so I think maybe you just don't understand that. And plus it's new. And so it's exciting. And I don't know,
Yeah.
that's why I would say it's harder. You know, realize some of the things that you're going to have to go through.
Sure. That's what we've learned just with counseling so many marriages over so many years, that a lot of people, I think, naively have the idea that we love each other, it's going to be awesome. They don't realize that it really is a lot of hard work. There's the rolling up of the sleeves and being very intentional about building something awesome. Awesome doesn't happen. We use the terminology of coasting. There's only, when something's coasting, it's only going one way. It doesn't coast to higher things.
Yeah.
It only coasts downward. And in this broken world that we live in, anything left to itself without effort being put in and without care being taken and maintenance being done falls apart. That's the curse of the world. It's all in decline. And even unseen things, even a marriage will be in decline if it's coasting. I mean, my garden tells the story. If we don't weed it, it gets overgrown and ugly and not beautiful anymore, right? Well, it's the same thing with anything in this broken world. It's all in decline. I think that's why a lot of people say, well, it was harder. I didn't know that for it to be awesome, it was going to cost me the way that it does, right?
Yeah, I would maybe say young people have a habit of taking for granted what is safe,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so if your entry into marriage is healthy, right? You're intentional, you've thought about this, you've dated them long enough, but
Right.
not too long, that
Sure.
you kind of, this is a safe thing. And then what you realize is you can't take it for granted.
Right.
It only takes a couple of years, maybe less,
Yeah.
as you begin
Mhm.
living together and kind of putting this life together to realize, like, well, I can't just kind of,
Right.
like I come home from a hard day and,
Yeah.
she doesn't want to rub my feet,
Right. That's right.
So like, these are, you know what I mean? I just,
Another thing that
Yeah,
makes it
that's
hard,
good.
we learned quick too, that you can be operating at a real high level and it be pretty awesome. And then life changes on you and you have that first baby or that third one, or a job change, or an economy turns down, or a layoff. And with the changes, significant changes in life, the demand on us changes. And I can be operating great for a period of time, but then you throw two kids on top and I'm not doing well anymore. I haven't made that adjustment. I'm still doing the things I did when I was 19 and just married. Well, now I'm 24 with two kids and a career that's demanding, and I haven't made adjustments in how I spend my time, how I speak to Charlene, how we resolve conflict, how we manage the stuff of life. And so now I'm a beginner again. And we laughingly call that, one spouse, but many marriages. I think we're in our 7th marriage now. You guys are probably in your 5th or 6th. As you graduate, we got to learn new stuff, hon, because we're not doing good now, right?
yeah.
So that's another thing that makes it hard. It changes. And the demands on a husband and wife are changing all the time, right? So about the time you think you got it wired, you realize you don't.
Right. We have another one coming up as soon as our kids are gone.
Yep.
I'm sure we
That's
will
a
have
big
to
one.
relearn
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we've been talking about it for years,
Yeah.
which I think is
Yep.
good in those little car rides you get
Big
together
time.
or something like that. Like,
Yep.
hey, we need to not be that,
Yeah.
Yeah. Or,
Right.
And I think our
Yep.
next press will be one of us, age taking its toll on our bodies, and we're going through physical things at our age. We're 67,
no, I
68.
think our next one is if we choose not to work anymore and in
Oh, yeah.
retirement.
Me
which,
under your feet
Yeah.
every day is not going to go well. I think we're gonna have to learn new
we'll
stuff,
just
aren't
have
we?
to wait and see.
That'll be a challenge.
Mhm.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, let's start here. Big question, loaded. I'm going to press you guys right away. So when you look at, you said 25 years of marriage. I think at this table, there's enough years of knowing Jesus and walking with the Lord that we all agree that he teaches us through hard stuff. That's where in the fire of the trials of life is where virtue is built and grows in us, and the Holy Spirit accomplishes much in our life through hard things. So when it comes to marriage, usually that's where growth comes, is through hard things. So what's the most difficult thing when you think about your marriage that you guys have faced that led to growth in your marriage, a deepening of your love for each other?
Ours was definitely, we have a child that has a disability and was
Okay.
born with that. And it was something that wasn't expected. And I think that, well, I think all people could say that, when you are going to have a baby, you look forward to them having this, what the world would say is
Oh, yeah.
normal and
Yeah,
perfect.
perfect.
And
Sure.
this, and that when that doesn't happen, then there's there's complicated stuff,
You bet.
right? So you
Mhm.
have doctor's appointments, and it's a lot of time, or
Time.
it's also the fact that something didn't go the way that you thought that it would go.
Mhm.
And so while that can all be, and we could say, oh, those are somewhat of difficult or sad things,
Mhm.
but the amount that we grew in the Lord and in our marriage.
I've characterized it this way, which is it was the first time we've been reasonably successful,
Mhm.
right? I went to college. I had a plan. The plan worked out.
Yeah. Life's come to you pretty easily.
And for the first time in our lives, we faced something that was utterly out of our control.
Mhm.
Right.
That I couldn't just by kind of, putting my big boy pants on, I can
Yeah.
go conquer that, or
Yeah.
we can, and the difficulty of with an infant too, it's physical, like physically very demanding. You're tired.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're utterly very emotional. It's a lot of things coming to you. And we both knew, I think shortly after, that this was not going to just kind of fly by or be done in 6 months or something.
This was
like
big.
This was a big deal.
Yeah.
And so we really needed to, so for us, we grounded ourselves in the Lord, like, and frankly, in the ways that the Bible sort of talked about, it became real for the first time, right? Even the Sermon on the Mount talks about, blessed are those who mourn, and
Mhm.
those kinds of verses for the first time. And Americans just don't.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So the first time we begin experiencing these truths, like, what does that mean? What does
Yeah.
that feel like? So that was by far the biggest challenge, and it has been. We have fresh mourning
Yeah.
regularly.
Yeah.
Mhm. The one question I'd like to ask you, that particular area, do you feel closer to each other because of it? Because I know a lot of couples are pulled apart. They don't know how to deal with this. And how has that impacted your marriage? Just that, like you said, you have mourning at different times. And have you been able to mourn together?
No, I think
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is, because there's things that only the two of us have been through.
That's true.
And nobody else. I mean, you have family, right?
Sure.
Grandparents. We have
Right.
very supportive,
Great support.
very supportive. But it's still maybe the day-to-day and the things that we've had experience, it's brought us closer together because nobody else can understand it.
Right.
Mhm.
Like,
And that
those things.
I would tell people facing it, it's a choice.
Absolutely.
You will not naturally, you will have a lot of emotions, and
Yeah.
they will rule you
Yeah.
if you do
Mhm.
not
Great point.
have some. But for us, we both kind of, I don't know that we had a moment where we looked at each other and said, we got to be in this together. But I think we both sensed pretty early
Mhm.
on, we're in this together.
Well, and watching you, we saw that.
We did.
Watching you go through it, we saw you guys are in this together.
Yeah. I do think one thing that I found interesting to your point, Charlene, is the pediatrician actually set me down and said, they're there to look at the baby, but
Yeah.
not. And he was so kind. And he said, I need to tell you that most married couples that have a child with a disability, their divorce rate is even higher than 50%.
Mhm.
So you need to take time for you and your husband, because if you don't, there's a high risk that you could be divorced. And I said, oh, I mean, I was just shocked. But then I thought, well, it kind of makes sense, because
Yeah.
if you aren't in this together,
Yeah.
and if you don't grow closer through this,
Mhm.
then you can easily be torn
That's
apart.
a
And
good
Yep.
point.
he's not a believer,
Mhm.
but he just had some wise words, and I thought
Mhm.
it was profound. Anyway,
Yeah.
I remember the day you came back and told me. I did a lot of business with the Lord personally,
Mhm.
like in my own quiet time in the middle of the night, kind of, being challenged by him, and to reconsider these things. So, by far the biggest challenge continues to be, although we're excited about his future. He's got one, and a bright one.
Yes.
And so all those things are God's great mercy and grace to us in this. And I think that's been, but it changed us, and it changed our faith too.
Absolutely.
Because faith without this kind of trial, you can go, even Christians can go through this world without really ever putting their faith in him.
Yeah, right.
They'll do the walk and they'll talk, but they won't necessarily sort of take that step where they have to kind of throw caution away and say, Lord, I got to believe in you for this thing that you've got my good. Cause I, didn't feel all that good at the time, but what does it mean when he says he works all things for good for those who love him? Like, what does that really mean?
Yeah, right on.
So those are the types of things that happen when you're challenged that way. And I would encourage anybody also facing it that it's really hard when you have little ones. People will know this, to have small group time or to be in fellowship. I mean, Sundays are one thing, but really be in. But that was, I think, the biggest single change we made. It was only a few months after he was born that we're like, I made the call, and Erica went with me, that we are going to find a group somewhere.
Oh, okay. And that became
very important.
Yeah. Well, so, anyway, dear friends, long story of that reconnection that led to a whole new, and now you can look back and go, okay, there was a path there. There is a,
because I think a lot of couples could have had a tendency to isolate during that.
Oh, I think that would be
and they're just so
easy.
shell shocked that they kind of isolate and scramble backwards, where you guys reached outward, right? Which I think probably made all the difference in the world. Yeah.
No. And that's precisely what you want to do, right? Because you're busy doing the stuff, which with a baby alone is
a baby alone is difficult.
And then you add on these extra pressures and these extra thoughts and these extra, and you can choose to go down this path of just sort of mourning in yourself over it. And it's a dark place to go. And instead we sort of had to go, no, eyes over here. This is a different direction, different goal. And anyway,
I think, and we should say too, that the Lord has been so faithful, because everything that the doctors told us, or a lot of what the doctors told us when he was born, that they didn't come to be.
Yeah.
That he saw as many challenges ahead, but that the Lord just
it's amazing.
has been so good to him and to us.
I've told people the story. I laid it awake one night, kind of crying, to be honest with you, over it, and sort of, and I asked God to help him, and in exchange that I would tell anyone in any circumstance that you have done it. And the Lord has, I can say, I think honestly, I've been faithful to that commitment to him.
Awesome.
And it has been utterly embarrassing on multiple occasions, right? Because there's been some moments where, in particular, some of the great doctors that we have that we're pretty confident are not believers kind of look at me like I'm from Mars when I say, well, I know why that is. God did that.
Yeah, right.
They'll go like, why don't you go back to your little mountain town?
Right on.
Where, anyway, so
we've done entire episodes on prayer. I think if anybody listens to many of these, you realize we advocate a pretty fluent and even aggressive prayer life between husband and wife. Is so critical to building a spiritual bond together, a genuine, deep unity together. I'm assuming prayer took a big place. I mean, I know in the biggest crisis in our life, I think we were answering this question, praying together like we had never done before was one of the outcomes of it. And one of the things that was an entrance point, I think, for God's grace to meet us, as we just really aggressively learned we had always prayed together, but not like that, not when you're desperate, right? And so that catapulted us into a prayer life together that we still enjoy today. And did that happen with you guys? Was prayer a big part of how you ministered to one another, strengthened each other, came together during that time?
Yeah, it was a component of the things that we did. I think that, yes, is the answer to the question. I think we also spent a lot of time, again, intentionally talking about stuff, about taking the time to kind of process what's going on together. And I will say, I mean, we don't know how many hundreds of people, kind of were involved. I mean, this is the value of community, right? Which
Yeah.
Right.
the Bible tells us to have, right?
Mhm.
Is in moments like this, a lot of people will kind of get involved in that. So, our prayer life, a purpose for God. I think really, I think we were very much the what's the right, the tight, the normal version of an American Christian,
Typical.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Typical American Christian.
Yeah.
It's like Sundays, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Sure.
Right? I never felt like it was a bad thing to do, but it's there. It's something I'll do, but I got all this other stuff going on the other 6 days of the week, very casual about our faith. And this was the thing that made
Mhm.
that
Wow.
casualness into
Boy, it does.
an intensity. And so, and that was very true of the two of us, choosing to be intensely focused on figuring this out and what God had for us in this thing.
Well, it's interesting as you're sharing about it. One of our favorite verses out of Ecclesiastes, where it talks about two is better than one, because when one does fall down, if no one's there to pick them up, how do they get up? Right. And I know you probably did a lot of picking each other up. And when one was in an emotional wreck about it and really grieving or worried about future things, the other one was able to encourage faith there and speak faith. And that's what we experienced, was how true that truth is, that two is better than one, man. And when you go through that with a spouse, that you're traversing it together in unity, it's all the difference in the world, right?
I absolutely agree, because there's probably many times when Jay came home from work and I had he's chuckling, but a really rough day.
Yeah.
And he would just,
because there was a lot of intent. There were doctor's appointments, but then there was also some specific things we were supposed to do during those developmental years, those first couple of years, that required a ton of personal time, like with one-on-one with your child.
Yeah.
Which of course you want to do anyways as a parent,
Right.
but it's different when you're doing things that are not fun and lighthearted, and that, they're very purposeful. And Erica bore the brunt of that. We used to joke that this car we've subsequently sold, could drive itself to UCLA.
To UCLA, yeah.
Because it had gone so many, probably 50 times in the first year, and that's
I
like,
think it was more than 50 times.
Wow.
It was like weekly.
yeah. And it was,
But it's okay.
Yeah.
But
It's okay.
you're right. I'd come home. Somebody got to keep working and pay for the health insurance,
Right.
So I'm going to
Sure.
work and coming home, and Erica's, like struggled through this thing for the day, and there's something burning on the stove or whatever.
Yep.
And, like, it's okay. I'm in too. And, like I'm like any other guy, at the end
Sure.
of a work day, it's like, I just want to come
Yeah.
and sit down and get a break from that. But it also taught us, I think, how to work. We were both have always been pretty decent workers, but that phase just, it beat any remaining selfishness out of the two of us.
Oh yeah.
pretty
Didn't
quick.
it? It just crushes it right
yeah,
out of you.
Yeah, it's gone. So, but yeah, that two is better than one is really so true. And to me, it's a goal for, if I'm going to tell any young couple, like, you want to get, that's a place to get.
That's where you want to get to.
You don't start there.
Right.
No matter how much you liked each other and you thought you were perfect for each other and loved each other, you are not there when you start.
Yeah.
It's true.
And you've got to get there. You'll know when you'll get there, but if you don't know, you're not there.
Well, and
like does that make sense?
raw,
totally
the
makes
raw
sense.
truth is, to get there, you got to go through hard stuff
yeah.
together. That's it. There's no other way there.
Yeah.
But to face hard stuff head on, man. And I know couples listening, everybody has a story. Everybody's been through hard things. This is a broken world we're in, and everybody's had hard things. I think one of Charlene, one of your early questions was, what did it do? Did it draw your marriage together, or did it have any effect of blowing it apart? And we've seen so many couples that, facing trauma or trial or unexpected hardship, it blows them up, and they begin to blame each other. They grow more distant. They isolate from each other rather than experiencing what you guys did. It can go the other way fast. I think that's what your doctor was probably trying to share with you.
No, I absolutely think so. He was so kind.
Right.
So,
and that's why I tell people, it's a choice.
Yeah.
Don't think it will not come naturally.
Yeah.
No, it will not.
That you have to say, and especially young men out there, if you're facing anything like that, or that big trial, that first one that hits your household, is like, it's a choice and you're supposed to make it.
Right.
Like, it's you.
Big time.
Yeah.
I even find with young men, I don't know, I've only known young men since my lifetime. I don't know if this is age old, but I would think it would be. when you do take a wife and you do have a family and you are working hard, you're not a child anymore. And I have found that young men struggle
with putting away childish
things and becoming a man and doing what God's called them to do, and he will equip them to do if they humble themselves and cry out to him.
Right.
And I find that in anything that causes you to start having to lose who you want to be or who you think you should be or the propers that you should get, for a man, it's difficult to say, no, I'm going to choose, like what you were just saying, Jay, I'm going to choose this.
Right.
And not choose what my own flesh is saying, that's screaming to me, no, you deserve this or that, or this is too difficult. Young men have a hard time putting that away. That's so pivotal in a marriage,
right,
to be able to put yourself away. How do you, when you intimated you have struggles with that, how has that affected you, and how did the Lord break in to change those things?
Yeah, I was thinking that I can honestly say that through that whole trial, I never had a moment where I'm like, I just want out of this.
That's
like
awesome.
where I seriously thought about
Right.
quitting it.
yeah,
Right.
And so I think a lot of that has to do with what was modeled, right? So we talked about on
I
the front
agree.
end, like I had my
I
own
agree. You
father
don't
figure.
quit.
My own dad was just never in the vocabulary.
Yeah.
Never. I mean, maybe he had those thoughts. I don't know what's in his head, but he never acted that way.
yeah,
Right.
And so I think that's big, right? How do you get those modeled versus whereas a lot of young men right now are getting modeled. Hey, quit when it gets hard.
that's
Oh
right.
no, you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
That's true.
But all these things are mixed together, right? Deep down in every man too is a strong sense of honor and duty, right? Like, and I think that's even before you're a believer,
Okay.
that desire to be honorable and to fulfill one's duty is ingrained in how God made us. Thankfully, that piece, I think you can shut that piece off like any other, so if it becomes a duty issue, you kind of say, look, I'm the person who's supposed to be but you kind of have to believe the right things, right?
Yeah, right.
You got to believe that. These are always tough words to say in any context, right? That you're the stronger vessel versus the weaker vessel, right? These are things that the Bible tells us that, that aren't real popular today. And they're not meant in any kind of, worth sense. We've talked about this as a group couple times, but like, okay, it falls on you. Biblically, you're the one that's supposed to stand.
Going to rise and
moment.
fall by you. Yeah.
And by then so this is our younger child. So our older one and so I definitely knew like, well, we've got this one too. He's 2 years older. We got to, somebody's got to be here to make sure that this whole little circle operates for him too.
Right.
And it's remembering that, and that, Erica too, I knew, I could tell, I'd come home and Erica can tell you her own, what she was going through. I know she had a lot of emotional turmoil in that first 6 months and even through 2 years. Really difficult time for you, but I could tell when I came home because I was paying attention.
Yeah.
Like, somebody better be.
Yeah.
Somebody better be a rock here, but that doesn't, anyway, didn't put away a lot of my own feelings about it. But, God was good in those times.
Yeah.
To just kind of, Lord, I'm going to need you to help me put that aside or process that. And anyway,
we've been talking a lot. The last episode, the last couple episodes have been on out of Ephesians 5, talking to wives about the call to submit yourself to your husband as to the Lord. The husband's called to love the wife as Christ loved the church. A very familiar passage. It kind of leads me to my next question. I'm going to ask both of you. I'm going to start actually with you, Jay, because you were kind of right there on it anyway. But in terms of being a husband, what's probably been the toughest virtue to get a hold of or lesson to learn, just personally for you as a husband? I got the stuff that I came by roughly. God had to really do a work. Some of it it was natural to me being a husband in that regard, but some of it God really had to do a work. What's been the toughest part of being a husband that you've experienced?
Yeah, and it's out of those verses. It's sacrifice is the term. I mean, and that's, God calls men to be Jesus to their wives, right? To be Christ to their spouse. Well, Christ went to the cross and died, literally, so, that's how I always kind of remind myself that that's the call. And when you, again, set your mind on it as a man, here's what the Lord did to me. And he did it through a slew. I can't even tell you what the fights were about, because we did fight with each other on many occasions.
Had words.
We had words.
Strong words.
Yes.
We call it heated fellowship.
Heated
Yes.
fellowship. Yeah, that's right. It started with what I know you guys have heard me use this line before, dangerous prayers, right? Where these are open-ended prayers in my mind. The ones where you say, God, I want to be a better man.
Yeah.
Do it. Right? Like in your prayer time.
Watch out.
Right.
And, these are things where you're like, you really mean it, but you don't know what it's going to mean. Right? God will answer those prayers.
Yes.
I have found he utterly answers them. And usually the way he answered that particular prayer is we have heated fellowship, and then I usually go too far.
Yeah.
Right. Either in insisting upon my own way or just the way I treated her during the discussion. And I go back, and the Lord usually gives me less than 30 minutes where he just kind of puts his thumb on me.
Yeah.
And goes, if you wanted to be better, you wouldn't have done that.
Right.
And so then I feel the mutual obligation to go back and tell her, I was wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And not always, I would say, to say that I agreed with your point, but it was more of a coming back to say, as your husband,
I'm never entitled to do
I
this.
shouldn't have treated you that way.
Right.
That was not the right way to handle this. But a lot of times it was to give you your way. Usually it was something that wasn't that important.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times it had to do with me.
Yeah.
Like I wanted my own time to do the things that I wanted to do. And, like she's pushing in going, this isn't working for this household. And I'm going, yeah, well, this household better adjust.
Yeah.
And then I'd come back and the Lord would go, no,
wrong.
He'd literally say, you adjust.
Yeah.
That would be the quiet voice in my head is, no, you're going to change that.
Yeah.
And I'd go back and go like, I don't want to change that, Lord.
Yeah.
You have this tug of war with him, but he did that 3, 4, 5 times. I don't know, probably in a couple year period.
Yeah.
And it makes you pick when the Lord might do that to you, you start choosing your battels a little bit more carefully.
Because it ain't no fun.
I don't really want to have to go through this again. So
you learn.
You can have that one. I don't, does that make sense?
Wow.
Gosh, I think that's huge in any man's life. Living a sacrifice. It cuts against everything in us of our self-life to, let's face it, I think our idol of choice is always me.
Is ourselves.
Right? Right. And I think not to bow to that idol, God really has to do. That's a deep work of the Lord. When you see a man who is willing to live sacrificially and lay himself aside, then you're looking at a pretty profound work of God that's gone on over time for that to even happen. I think it's probably every man's big lesson, as married men. Yeah. What about you, Erica, as a wife?
As a wife, definitely learning to let Jay lead. Not feeling like you're laughing. It's not. No, Jay did want to be
laughing too about our dancing. Yes. Erica notoriously never lets me lead. We'll even dance in the kitchen, just when it's the two of us sometimes. And I'll find myself being moved around the room and I'm like,
no, I have to consciously, it is a joke we have, but I have to tell myself, oh, no, let him lead again. Let him lead when we're dancing even. Yes. But I think it was because, and it's not that it was learning to fully trust that he had our best interest and that he was following the Lord and that he would lead us into what we were supposed to do. And it took me a while to learn that.
Well, as the two wives here at the table, I mean, it is hard to trust, right?
We can trust Jesus pretty easy.
Yeah, very easily.
The problem is you didn't marry Jesus, you married me.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
I know. But I will say, like, I am very thankful because the man that he is now, I can tell that the Lord has changed him.
Yeah.
Which is.
Yeah. I think to your point, though, is really important about you can trust Jesus. Well, that's the problem is when you're looking at that knucklehead on the other side of the dinner table from you and you're even listening to this podcast going, well, that sounds great. These guys get along really well, but I got that guy that sits across the table from me and I can't trust him to make a smart decision. Like the problem is he'll never start making smart decisions until he's vested, until the Lord vests in him the authority to operate. You guys, both parties must simultaneously step to
Isn't
the
that
line
it?
in
Yeah.
this thing
Exactly
for
right.
it to succeed. And you don't, the reality is you don't get to, I mean, that's the thought that goes through my head is, hey, if I sacrifice on this thing, she could take advantage of me.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
You know, like she could make me pay for
And
this.
she's got the same.
She's
Got the same issue.
exact
If I
same
trust
challenge.
him, he could really
Yep.
Screw this
mess me up, man.
And you know, and you're looking at the other person going, that even seems likely to occur.
Right.
Oh,
You know?
totally.
Right.
But you're not going to get there. You're not going to get to the, and this is what you say. This is why I love that Ecclesiastes verse about two are better than one. That's this place you get to on the other side of that.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly right.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's worth every bit of sacrifice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is to get to that spot.
And so you make up a point that learning is a process, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
it doesn't happen the first day you come home from your honeymoon.
No,
Yeah.
in fact, probably about a year, and you're thinking, well, now you see all of his faults, right?
Yeah.
And
Sure.
so then you learn slowly over time. And I think it was a Bible study that I was in that actually taught some of the other, I had very wise women around me that and that had experienced this too when they were married not as long. And then they were talking to some of us younger women, I guess. And, anyway, so then over time, as you do it a little bit at a time and you see your husband change and you see you change and then what it does to your relationship, I think that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I learned a long time ago when I was a young wife that I had to learn to trust Jesus for my husband.
Right.
And I think that was one of the biggest lessons that the Lord has ever shown me, that Kenny might not be trustworthy, but Jesus is.
Right.
And as long as I put my trust in the Lord and be submissive, what He called me to do, I can trust Jesus for Kenny. And that was huge for me. And I kept thinking, I don't know how far I can trust this guy, but I can trust you, Lord. And then it shifts it where it needs to be. My hope is still in Jesus, even for our marriage.
Yeah, we had this conversation, I think, just as we were done recording our last episode, which again had to do with men, but because Sean had brought up, I think in that episode, what happens when he doesn't deserve it? It's easy to submit to a man who's awesome, right? Tough where a man is, a wife's husband is struggling, right, with awesome. And yet she's still called to submit to him. Same way in the workplace, if I have a boss, I respect that position. He may be a knucklehead and I don't respect him as a man, but I have to respect that place he has in that work environment, right? Same way with husbands and wives, just by the virtue of there's a husband there, that's when a woman has to trust the Lord. I got to trust the Lord that even as I come in graciously under him, that even if something goes south, makes a bad decision or whatever, costs us something, I can still even trust the Lord for that. It's really hard for women to do. I don't envy the place of wives.
Well, it's the same place a man is in different areas. You have to place yourself there.
Yeah.
You have to say, in the Lord, I submit to the Lord.
Right.
And the order that He has given.
And the same way men are called
exactly
to sacrifice for their wife, whether he thinks she's deemed worthy or not. This is, I do this because it's a call of God upon my life. And
it's the same.
It's got little or nothing to do with who deserves what. I always go back to the love of Jesus. He gave himself for me when I was completely and utterly undeserving. This is the love of God. And the church worships him and comes in under him and exalts him, even when we don't necessarily understand what he's doing.
Yeah.
We still do, because he's God. There's a place there that is revered, right? So both are operating in a deep faith. This is why a lot of what we do on this podcast, I know, appeals probably only to people with a pretty deep and active faith. If someone listening here is relatively new in the faith or even shallow in the faith, they listen to a lot of what I think Shar and I do and go, I don't agree with that. Because really all of this, particularly when you talk about Ephesians 5, the calling of a husband to die for, the calling of a wife to submit to, takes a deep faith that God's design is good and perfect and glorifies him, whether we understand it all the time or not, right?
Yeah.
All right, here comes a softball question. I love to let you guys get mushy. So, what do you most admire about each other? Here's your chance to just slather it on. What do you most admire about Jay, Erica?
He's a great dancer.
Oh,
Just kidding.
because he lets
is.
you lead.
No, that's not why. But he always is willing to dance and have a good time. That's kind of a superficial one.
You're
but
making my wife jealous right
Yes,
now.
I am. I'm very jealous right now.
Every wedding we go to, Shawnee goes, "Let's dance." I go, "Yeah." I look like a linebacker doing football drills when I dance. It's embarrassing.
So you really
it hurts.
appreciate that.
I do
Yeah.
because he's always willing to have a good time. That's probably it. But
you
that's
don't like
not.
to dance as much as I do.
I
That's the
don't.
interesting
There
thing.
you
I
go.
don't.
Why is it the couples always end up that way? I don't. Maybe where one really likes to go
Oh,
do
that's
that
how
it
and
is.
everything. Like
Yeah.
anyway.
But I do appreciate
I
Jay is very, very. He forgives easily, which is a very sweet thing. And then also
That's
it's
awesome.
very handy, meaning he can fix things, can make things, he can.
Well
you
done,
know,
Jay.
Yeah. So,
Guys like you aggravate me. I can't fix it. I break it twice and maybe fix it once.
That's all right. Have you seen me? I can't lift heavy things. But I can. I kind of look forward to IKEA furniture. It's something my mind gets going on that, and I
That's
like that just fine.
great.
So for me, Erica has always been one of the sort of naturally selfless people. I think that-that's a big part of her personality and also part of the way you were raised. There was a real attitude of service in her house when she was growing up, just of, like everybody pitches in and does their part, and nobody, your dad works 6.5 days a week,
Yeah.
kind of guy. And that was just the nature of the business that he was in. It wasn't a choice he was making, because he didn't want to be home, but because of, that's what farmers do. They work 6.5 days a week. But so Erica, I think, and she comes to it naturally. So I was very surprised by this trait when we got married, this, very willingness to just pitch in and do work and I'll do that now. And cause for me, it was always very transactional, right? Like helping was this thing I did if you were going to help me, but otherwise, so I would honestly say I've been very surprised, and pleasantly so, all our marriage, about how just selfless she is.
Yeah.
Like, this is so.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would see that about her. I agree with that. Awesome. All right, last question, and we're running out of time, so go fast. But you got the floor, Jay. You're talking to men about marriage. What's your biggest chunk of advice for them?
Yeah, lots of things I could think of, but I'll stick on topic, which is come to grips with this issue of sacrifice and submission. Because it's exactly what you said, Charlene. And I remember myself at 23 when we got married, and like, you just don't want to come to grips with it. I want to keep doing these childish things. I want to do the things that I like to do. You're just supposed to attach to my life to become this thing that I want to do. And
a little bit of Peter Pan in all of us, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And you want to, but you won't. It's worth it though. Like, you think that it's a negative when you're young. Right. When you're a young man, you think it's a negative to be sacrificial, to give that thing up, like that hobby that you have. Like nowadays, I know a lot of young men, it's like video games.
Yeah.
That time that you just take for yourself to do those things. And so coming to grips with what that looks like had I to do it over again, I would have been a lot more intentional about it earlier on, because this stage that we're in now, despite being 1,000 times harder than 23, is 1,000 times more enjoyable.
That's the truth.
Like, I genuinely love being with her and around her and doing things with her and talking to her about her day or mine. And you get there when you start here on that subject.
It reminds me that those verses we're talking about in Ephesians 5, where he starts out with, husbands, love your wives as Christ loves the church and gave himself for her. But as you go down a few verses, he says that he might present her back to himself, this awesome, glorified church without spot, wrinkle, blemish, or any such thing. So his whole point is, husbands, when you love your wives, even as you love yourself, you're really loving yourself. You're going to get back this awesome thing the more sacrificial you love. The same as Jesus got back this cleansed bride, fully adoring him through his sacrifice, right? So men, you're totally right, Jay. Men tend to be under the illusion that I'm going to give my life away. I'm losing something here. No, dude, you're gaining. With every ounce of sacrificial love you freely offer, you're gaining something glorious back here, right? That's the whole point. It's awesome. Erica, how about you? You're talking to women. What's your last bit of chunk of advice here?
Two things, but they kind of go together. The first one is to make sure that you put your husband where he belongs, to keep that, because I think oftentimes, and especially when you have small kids, you can look to their needs and put them above. Well, and I don't even want to say above, but spend the time that you could spend with your husband sometimes, and they become little idols, frankly. And so I think that that's really important to realize, because your relationship with your spouse lasts longer than your kids are going to leave.
Great point.
That's the goal, right?
Sure.
That they would go and have their own lives and marry and have a spouse, but you are going to be with your husband. So you need to make sure that you're always investing in that relationship.
Yeah.
And then my second thing is to spend time, set aside this time and spend with them. So go on a trip once a year, and maybe just a weekend or something, but take that time so that you know what it's like just to be the two of you. Good. Because I think often when you have small kids, it's hard to do, but it's worth it. It's worth it, because there's a lot of other things can come in and take the focus away from just your marriage. So
I think we did it. We just as you're saying that, Charlene and I really didn't begin to do that till way late in the game, probably year 12 or with that first one. And I regret that. Honestly, I have a little bit of regret that I worked hard, no lack of that, but I didn't do that enough in the earlier years. Even it's a real challenge for me to shut my life down and do that. But you're right. The value of that is so important. It's huge.
Just curious, was it you? Because in our experience, I was always very willing to go do those things, but Erica was living the day to day. And so when that moment would come, we'd set a weekend
It was
aside.
more me with the church pastoring.
Yes,
definitely. Right. It was kind of a career thing, right? Wouldn't you say, babe?
Yes, it was getting Kenny away. And it was difficult for him the responsibility he felt for that was sometimes overlooked to me. So, we had to work on that.
So she was wanting to, I think there was a couple of years where I literally preached 50 Sundays a year. That's a lot. Most, that's a lot. That means I'm there all the time,
And to be clear, I was giving that advice because we didn't do it when we were younger. We've done it now, but I was just thinking that would be the good advice.
That's what you've learned.
That's what I've learned.
Yeah.
But I thought it was because it was different for us. I was very willing to go take those weekends. I didn't have a work life like yours.
Sure.
So I got weekends off.
But she was in the day-to-day
But she was
grind.
in the day-to-day, and we would get to that moment, and she would just, I can't leave them.
No,
we
and
got X to do.
That
and
is
Y
much
to
more.
do, and
That is more common.
I think
moms
so.
have a hard time leaving. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
That is necessary in your marriage. And I just wanted to say that watching you two, we've known you a long time. And when you first got married and we became friends, and it's been a real pleasure for me to watch your marriage grow. Because sometimes that doesn't happen all the time.
Right.
And it just blesses me and Kenny to watch the Lord working individually in you, and then how that has, and you work on your marriage together.
Yeah.
And you know what? You're really showing the world that looks at you that there's a God, and how he wants to work in our lives, and how he wants to proclaim his name through our marriages. And that's the one thing that we always want to tell people. It's so important. And because we look at you and we see there's God. There's a God that
puts Jesus on display.
Totally on display.
Yeah.
And I know other people do too. And it has been a progression and a tenacity that you both have, an intentionality that we have watched. And we're just so thrilled to know you guys and to be in this fight with you. So it's a pleasure for us.
Your guys' friendship is a great treasure to Charlene and I. We love you guys very much. And thanks for doing this. We appreciate giving us the time and sharing your life with people. Yeah.
It's been fun.
Awesome. All right. Until next time, then, check in back with us. This has been a blast. We love you all. And until next time, God bless.